Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review, and today we are going to take a look at Masters of the Universe Revelation Savage He-Man, and he also includes Orko. So this is part of the Masterverse line, 30 points of articulation, great looking package. It's kind of cool that, this is a double pack, and it comes in a much elongated box. One thing that throws me off, though, I think it's kind of stupid, but the box is so gigantic, but they couldn't have He-Man to stand straight up and down for some reason. Instead, he's kind of like in this weird pose where he's kind of like thrusting his crotch at you. It's weird. It's funny looking. It looks horrible on the shelf, but I don't know. I guess I'll just take it, I guess. Over here, we have Savage He-Man. Great illustration. I love this artwork a lot. This looks amazing. And on the back, even better looking illustration. I think this really captures the ferocity of like Savage He-Man. If you've seen the cartoon, or even if you remember like the old 80s mini comic where he appears in it, he's super buff, he's all swolled out, he's gigantic, and this looks great. Savage He-Man, the most powerful primate in the universe. For years, it was assumed that Prince Adam could only call upon the power of Grayskull using the Sword of Power. But what happens if he did not raise aloft his magic sword and still said, by the power of Grayskull? The answer, Savage He-Man, a combination of primal rage and all the power in the universe. He-Man tears through Eternia in an uncontrolled rampage, leaving his friends hoping that Adam is in there somewhere. Right, excited to check this out. Looks great. Some of the other figures also available are Fisto, which I've reviewed, Andra, which I've reviewed, Triclops. I saw at the store, passed up on him. I thought he was overpriced. He comes in a deluxe box, but he was like priced at like $29. And the only thing is, he comes with armor, a cape, and an extra head. And I couldn't justify paying that extra money just for that. Faker, this is, I believe, the previous release, Scareglow, and Stinkor. Right, so let's get them out. Excited to check out He-Man and Orko. I'm not going to, I don't want to dive too much or touch on the story at all if you haven't watched it yet. So I don't want to spoil it for you. So we're just going to talk about the action figures. We're not necessarily going to talk about why they look like they do. Just so I don't want to spoil it for you. If you're a big fan and you haven't gotten around to watching Revelation yet, just don't want to spoil it. Alright, so first impressions of Savage He-Man and Orko while they're in the tray. They look great. Very excited about to get this version of Orko. He-Man looks awesome. He has his giant battle axe. He has his sword. And like I said, I don't know why they put him in this weird pose, because the box is tall enough where he can stand straight up and down, but they kind of positioned him so he's like thrusting his crotch at you, which is weird. Alright, we have Orko. This looks great. Alright, I'm not going to take out all of his accessories. I'm going to leave the hands in here and for now, and the sword. I just want to take a look at the axe and the spear at the very least. The spear looks really well done. The top of the spear looks awesome. It's like a jagged rock. Very plain, basic paint application. I kind of like how they have the twine underneath. It's a nice detail. Slight wooden texture on the staff of the spear. Very solid accessory. The axe looks awesome. I'm excited to get this. Nice giant axe. There's some wear and tear on there, as you can see. Some chipping. It's kind of like a gray plastic. There's some contrast with the blades versus the actual like handle of the axe. Looks awesome. Glad to have this. Now for Savage He-Man himself, let's get him in a neutral pose. To be honest, I'm a little disappointed in the sculpting of the character. Not that the sculpting's bad, but I was kind of expecting something a little bit more gigantic and like almost like Hulk-like. Especially when you look at the back of the box, he looks ginormous. He looks like the Incredible Hulk, and he's like, even in the cartoon, he's just huge. But this figure, it just feels like a step above He-Man in terms of like the musculature and the size. And he doesn't want to conform into like a completely neutral pose. Like his legs just want to remain in this wide stance. Same with his arms. His arms will only fold in so far. Alright, so I can tell right now I'm kind of having mixed feelings about this figure. Let's take a look at him up close. Now, in terms of the detail, the face is a great sculpt. I love the hair. The paint application on the figure itself, there's a lot of detailing going on. There's some, like, apparently some washing going on, so it really brings out the muscles even more. And it makes them look a little bit dirty. And I don't know if it's just my camera or what, but if you look carefully, there is some disconnect in terms of the colors. Like his chest piece here and his abdomen are a different shade of flesh tone than his arms. His arms look a little bit more. They're a little bit more tanned. They're slightly a bit richer in orange than his torso here. His head and his body here, there's a lot, the flesh tones seem to match. But then once you get to his arms and his legs, it looks like there's a little bit of disconnect. But like I mentioned, you can kind of see the wash running in the crevices of his muscles. It really brings out the details. His loincloth is really well sculpted as well. Clean paint application towards the top where it's torn and on the string. Same with the butt. Yeah, great looking. I love the head a lot. The head looks awesome. The one thing I do like about Savage He-Man's head is that his face looks a little bit older and more mature than plain He-Man. Like the normal Revelation He-Man, I kind of felt that the face sculpt and, with the overall appearance, he just looked a little bit too young. This one looks a little bit older, and I think this works for me. In terms of his articulation, his head rotates like this. It's kind of weird because his hair is kind of a stiff plastic, so there's not a whole lot of give, and it kind of gets in the way. In terms of looking down, he's always looking down. He doesn't want to look forward because of his hair. He doesn't want to look up. So that kind of hurts his articulation. He's cut below the chest and allows for a swivel and some tilting motion. He has a waist swivel, which is nice. His arms rotate. And then they also go out. And much like most action figures nowadays, he has a bicep cut for that additional swivel movement. Pinless, double jointed elbows, wrist articulation. This material's it's a little stiff, but it has a little bit. It has some give to it, so you can kick forward, you can kick out, and he does have. Alright, now I kind of regret that I kicked it out because now it doesn't want to go back in. Right, there you go. He has a thigh cut, pinless, double jointed knees, boot cut, and there's his ankle articulation. Now, if you're curious about how he looks next to standard He-Man, we'll take him out in a second, but let's get his height down in first. So Savage He-Man stands at about a little under 7.5 inches. And over here we have standard Revelation He-Man. You know, there is a height difference. I want to say this guy's slightly taller by maybe a little bit, close to maybe 1/4 of an inch. But the thing that's disappointing me, that disappoints me with this guy is that he's not as like bulked out, and he doesn't look as like Hulk-like, like as he appears in the cartoon or on the box. In some ways, standard He-Man looks a little bit more swole and beefier than this guy. You know, this guy looks a little bit more cut, looks a little bit more leaner. This guy looks like he's eating all his carbs and his pastas. So, yeah, there's some disconnect here. Don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on the figure. I like him. I just kind of feel like his appearance just came up just a little bit short. You know, I think he could do with a little bit more mass, a little bit more size, and bulk him out just a little bit more. But I do think it's a great figure. I think initially I thought, you know, these would be the exact same figures, but I believe they're not. I think there might be some differences between them. So yeah, that's a comparison between the two. I do think this figure is worth the purchase though, just because it's Savage He-Man. You know, if you grew up in the '80s and you read the mini comics, you know, Savage He-Man makes an appearance in there, and it's just kind of cool to actually get a figure of him. And it's also a very generic looking figure. So if you wanted to, I could easily see some people carrying this over into like their Marvel Legends and just saying it's Kazar. I was kind of hopeful that, you know, I might get another one of these and actually convert it and make a custom Dar the Beastmaster, as played by actor Mark Singer, from the old like 1980s Barbarian film, The Beastmaster. So yeah, it's a great fig. I think it's worth the purchase. For me, this guy's about a solid 7 to a 7.5. I'd rate him higher if he had more articulation in his head and if he was beefed up more. Like, he's completely ripped and stuff, but I just wanted a guy that looked more like a monster. Especially when you read his description on the box and they describe him as being like, you know, a more primate than man. You know, this just kind of looks like Tarzan in some weird way. Alright, let's talk about this guy now. Really excited to check out Orko. It's a much different interpretation of Orko than what we're used to. And I don't want to go into like the whole story and spoil it for anyone. Alright, one thing that's disappointing, I can tell you right now, is this stand he's on. It's one of those flight stands, but mine is super loose. You see, it wobbles a lot. So I can't imagine this guy being on my shelf and maintaining this pose very long, because it's not a tight fit, which is disappointing. Because with your flight stands, you want to make sure that it can hold the pose. This is kind of like this jostling around. So I'm not fond of that. But the figure itself looks great. Orko himself stands in about a little under 4 inches from the top of his hat. It's a nice, fun interpretation of the character. His bandana scarf kind of deal is kind of like loose fitted. His head's on a ball joint, which is nice. So he gets all sorts of like wild articulation and range of motion. His ears, they are not articulated. His arms go out, so there's some articulation there. There's a fine micro texture on his robe, as you can see, as well on the scarf. But yeah, this stand here, this is bothersome. There's no reason why this shouldn't be more stiff. And there's no way to tighten it either. You know, this isn't a screw. It's not like you can tighten that. So yeah, this is the most disappointing thing for me, is that I'm not even sure if you can even remove this, to be honest. And I don't want to risk breaking it. Oh, there you go. Right, so you could remove this flight stand. The sculpting on it's really nice. It's not as like obscenely large like the Origins flight stand that comes with Orko. But yeah, very disappointed that it's not a like snug articulated joint. It's very loose fitting, and this figure has some weight to it. So over time, you know, this thing might just droop over. But it's a great sculpt though. I can't get enough of the sculpting. It looks really well done. The figure itself is great. I love this Orko. It's very unique. It's a fun looking character. And the articulation in the head alone, it's just fun to play around with. So yeah, if I had to rate this figure, the figure by itself, for me, it's a solid 8. It's Orko. It's as he appears in a very specific part of the show. The articulation is kind of limited, but you know, I don't think you expect a whole lot from this guy. You know, he's kind of very slender limbed, very stout. But yeah, this stand here, it looks great, but it's just unfortunate that it does this very easily. You know, very disappointed in that. But overall, I do think this is a solid purchase. It's worth, you know, just for me, even if it was just solid, you know, Savage He-Man by himself, it'd be a solid purchase. And the Orko is just like, it's gravy. You know, it's just something fun and something extra. I'm glad they provided this, because I can't imagine them releasing Orko as a solo release. Unless they did a 2-pack. You know, I think it would have been cool if they released a standard box Orko, but make it a 2-pack. Whereas you have this version of Orko and, you know, the other version of Orko. But yeah, this is a cool, fun 2-pack. It's worth the money, yes. But I'm going to say that if you could wait, I have a feeling that this might be a set that kind of like this sits on the shelf after a while. And, you know, as we've seen with like Battle Cat and even some of the Origin stuff, you know, the Masters of the Universe stuff, you know, we've seen price drops on them. You know, I've seen people say that like Revelation Battle Cats, they've purchased it for as cheap as like maybe like $11. And I have seen Faker on sale a while back, I think during the holiday season. So yeah, I wouldn't doubt it if after a while, if these figures just sit on the shelf long enough, you know, you might see a price drop, or they might go on sale for a week. So if you're patient and you don't need these right away, I just hold off. But if you do want to add an Orko to your Revelation collection or Savage He-Man, it's worth the purchase right now. So that's what I kind of feel. Just very disappointed that my flight stand is kind of wobbly. Leave a message in the comments below if your flight stand is opposite. Like if you actually get one where it's nice, snug, and fit, and it doesn't do this, let me know. Alright, so with that being said, once again, my name is Lou. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber or viewer, thank you so much for your continued likes, comments, and support. I greatly appreciate it. So, until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll talk to you at the next one.